Back goes Stafford. He looks up. He's being chased. He has the ball knocked out of his hands. Eagles have it.
Yep.
Second turnover.
Yep.
Knocked out of his hands. And coming up with it, Nolan Smith made the hit. Nolan Smith hit him. And Zach Bond recovered.
Welcome back, 97.3 ESPN. Ryan Rothstein filling in for Mike Gill. 1 hour down, and just a reminder that the 2 p.m. hour of the Sports Bash was brought to you by Autumn Lake Healthcare Center. Skilled nursing rehabilitation with elite-level care in a warm and vibrant atmosphere. Visit autumnlakehealthcare.com to find a location near you. All right, 3 p.m. hour. Let's get right to it as Scott Grayson of Fox 29 Philadelphia joins us for his weekly appearance on the Bash. For Graysons Grades, how did Scott Grayson grade some of the key participants in that Eagles divisional round win over Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, and the Los Angeles Rams, as now we have to gear up and get ready for an NFC title game at Lincoln Financial Field. Give Scott Grayson a follow at sgraysonfox29 on the X platform. Scott Grayson, good to see you, my friend. Welcome back to the Sports Bash. How we doing?
Doing good. Good to see you guys too.
Yeah, man. So let's get right to it. Big win, 28-22. Saquon Barkley, he's still running. Put up 205 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns on 26 carries. He has 460 total rushing yards combined now, if you include that Week 12 performance against the Rams. Just been, dominant all season long, certainly MVP worthy. Your biggest takeaway, before we get to some of your grades, that's sort of the question we've been posing. Your one big takeaway from that win yesterday is what?
I think resiliency. I think the way that the team was resilient early on as that game was still trying to figure itself out. And then as the weather hit, you tried to – it really was 2 games. It was one game before the weather, one game after the weather. And I think in both games, the Eagles were resilient. They showed that they were the team that was willing to and able to stand up to the elements the best and handle the elements the best. I think when the game, every time it seemed to be in the balance, the Eagles were the team that made the play. And I think that's a telltale sign of a team that can go places. There's some things that, I would have liked to see them do better. But overall, the name of the game is survive and advance and win. And that's ultimately what this team just keeps doing. And I think that is the mark of a team that has the ability to go very far and potentially win a title. And to me, they're showing those signs.
Yeah, it's the resiliency of this team, the fight, the confidence level in what they do and what they do best. All of that is certainly a huge factor in why we're talking about them in the title game. So let's start with some of your grades that you gave out. A lot of A's to be had. Obvious one is Saquon. We can touch on him in a minute, but I want to look elsewhere with you for a second. Jalen Carter, you just brought up Zach Bond. Those guys, man, Zach Bond, one drive alone, he was just absolutely dominant, got into the passing lane. Jalen Carter, the huge sack late, but he left his fingerprints all over that one. You can sort of pick or you can touch on both of those guys, but just the defensive performance, particularly – I look at Bond without Nakobe Dean, Scott, right? Like that linebacker play has been crucial for the Eagles all season long.
Yeah, you were right about the one drive. Zach Bond seemed to be in every play, did something to disrupt, and also had a fumble recovery at one point. The guy's just been phenomenal. I don't know how you don't re-sign this guy going into next season. They didn't do that with GT Edwards before, and they let him get away. And I think Zach Bond you got to keep. This guy's the heart and soul of this defense, and I just love the way he plays. And I love the way he's carried himself here. He knows he's not making as much money as pretty much a lot of other guys on that defense right now, but he will, and he's playing better and better every week. And I was concerned about the loss of Nakobe Dean, and I thought the guys that filled in for him, Orton Burks did well, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I thought that overall those guys did well. Not only are you being thrown into the fire, you're doing it without being able to trust your footing. And I think that as a defensive player, people watching at home, that's underrated. That's something you don't think about. You might watch, and the offense knows where they're going. The defense doesn't. They have to read and react and hope and try their best not to fall down, because that can lead to some some game-changing plays. And I thought that, you just look at Zach Vaughn, and he's been great. And I think he's one of the guys that feeds off the success of Jalen Carter. I mean, Jalen Carter, as you said, here's the big difference, right? Last year, it seemed like Jalen Carter hit a wall and just seemed to fall off. And you wondered what happened to him. Where is he? Is this the rookie wall? Whatever. This year, I mean, the guy just doesn't come off the field. I mean, he's taken it to a whole nother level in year number 2. And I just think that we're in for a fun ride watching this guy playing here. He's just going to continue to set the tone on that defense. He's a problem. Even when they try to put 2-3 guys on him, he is a big problem. And I just love watching him play. And both him and Vaughn, I mean, they're great. I love this defense in general. They play well together and for each other, and that's just such a big thing.
Another couple of A grades from you, Scott Grayson. Nolan Smith and Darius Slay. We'll tie both of these guys into this one for you. Nolan Smith it seems like he's playing his best football at the most important time of the year. Another key sack yesterday. He had 2 sacks in the game against Green Bay. Talk about Nolan Smith, and I said earlier as well, Slay. He looks like he's flying around like better than ever. He looked great, particularly early on in that game yesterday. So touch on those 2 guys that you gave an A performance grade.
Yeah, let's start with Slay. I mean, who loves positive praise more than Slay? And who loves the jewelry more than Slay? Slay can sense he can start to feel some jewelry, right? He wants that ring. And I get the sense that he sees and feels how close they are. And honestly, this team believes that they should win this Super Bowl. And they are taking it one game at a time, and that is important. But watching Slay yesterday, there were times in that game, and I mentioned it earlier, the offense knows where they're going. The receivers know where they're trying to go. And Slay was able to stop and break up some passes at key times in that second half that, it's amazing that he didn't slip or fall at times on some of those. And I just feel like he's ramped it up a little bit more here late in the season and this postseason especially. And I like watching him out there for sure. And he knew he had to with Quinyon Mitchell out at the time. And then you mentioned Nolan Smith. Who's had a better second half of the season on this team than Nolan Smith? I mean, the guy is just, it seemed as Brandon Graham went out and more snaps became available, Nolan Smith grabbed him with both hands and said, they're my snaps now. I want them. Mm-hmm. And he has just been a lot of fun to watch, how he has been pressuring quarterbacks. The moves that we went into the offseason last year saying Nolan Smith has the speed, but he's got to develop some moves to be able to get around some of these linemen. I think he's showing them. I think he's doing a great job with showing some moves and being able to get to the quarterback, and it's causing problems for those opponents. And it should be an interesting matchup to watch with how he tries to handle and combat Jaden Daniels next Sunday.
Scott, you gave Jalen Hurts a C, Kellen Moore a C as well. Seems like there's 2 school of thoughts with that whole thing is ball security, holding on to the ball too long, maybe means better ball security. He's pretty efficient, 20 passes, no interceptions, had that big run, had the nice 4th and 4 completion to move those sticks in the 4th quarter. Is this passing game fixable at this rate? Do they want to fix it? Or, I mean, obviously they do, but they really can, in my opinion. Just talk about this passing game and kind of where it's at with 2 games left to go in the season.
Yeah, let me start with, I might have been a little harsh on Jalen Hurts, but what I'm penalizing him for, look, he was not helped by some of his receivers. There were drop balls, A.J. Brown, and I'm not grading him based on his stats. I'm grading Jalen Hurts on the fact that some of the biggest plays that went against the Eagles offense were plays that I thought, perhaps could have been avoided from the standpoint of, as far as what he controls, getting rid of the ball. He is holding on to it a little too long. Now, you're right. He's not turning it over, and that is commendable because teams that are losing the turnover battle in the playoffs have lost every game. So, he is trying to do what he can to protect that ball because he understands how important that is. That's great, and I think that's great. However, some of his decision-making, I mean, there's nothing wrong with throwing the ball away. If you can get outside that tackle box and throw it away, I'd rather that than a 5-6 yard, sack that he just takes. Yeah. Sometimes I see that and it drives me nuts. He was not helped by A.J. Brown dropping that one ball, and not to get on A.J. Brown. That's a tough catch in a slippery environment for sure. but his stats certainly could have even been a little better in the passing game. As far as Kellen Moore, I think Pete, honestly, this passing game could have success. It's when they choose to pass that sometimes drives me crazy. And I am penalizing Kellen Moore heavily for the safety. There were 20-some seconds left in the third quarter. Your quarterback had just gotten banged up. I expected, as I think everybody else in the entire stadium did, a run play to end the quarter to give Jalen Hurts a couple more minutes to just kind of walk around on that knee, see where you're at with a third and maybe manageable situation after running it, and you're into the fourth quarter with a 3-point lead. I did not understand why at that moment there was a pass play call. I sometimes feel like they try to act like they're the smartest guys in the room. Mm-hmm. Oh, I know, we're going to run the ball. Yep. Well, guess what? Guess what we're going to do? And sometimes it's like they shoot themselves in the foot with that stuff. So it's, it's not that they can't. Right. It's not that they can't be successful. I still think that they can find success with some deep balls. They just haven't, for whatever reason, other than a few times yesterday, really thrown them much. And maybe they'll bring that out this week. Who knows? Every team tries to keep, plugging up the box and slowing Saquon down. Well, that should free up opportunities downfield. But Jalen's got to hit that back foot and let it fly. That's on him. And Kellen, for me, it's like I just don't understand sometimes when he chooses to pass, when it seems like the run is churning up yardage and clock. And so there's some of that. And now I know people out there might say, well, he had multiple hours of interviews. Was that affecting him? Maybe. But the NFL does not permit interviews for teams that are playing in the championship games this week. So we don't have to worry about that. Nobody has to worry about Kellen Moore being distracted this week in that regard. But that's where I kind of knock those two guys. I just think that at times there's avoidable negative plays there. There's ways to avoid them, and they're almost putting themselves into them, which could be detrimental to this team at some point. Hasn't so far, but something to watch.
To the defense, they played great. They forced those 2 turnovers, but Kyron Williams did get going, and they did have that long pass to Puka Nacua, 37 yards. And I don't know about you, Scott, but when they hit that play to Nacua, I thought that game was going to be over. Yeah. Is this defense ready to go against a guy like Jaden Daniels? How do you think the defense performed as a whole, really outside of Jalen Carter? How do you think this defense performed yesterday?
Overall, I thought the defense did well. Vic Fangio, I love what he schemes up. I love watching what he puts out there, with one exception. When they're up by 2 scores in the fourth quarter, he's content to let a team go down the field thinking that they'll take time off the clock in the process. To Stafford's credit and the Rams, they moved the ball downfield after Saquon's touchdown really quickly. They took advantage of that without taking much time off the clock, and it just let them right back in the game. And so there's one thing that I would love to see Vic, listen, step on the throats. Keep the foot on the gas pedal. Don't change what's working. That's the one caveat there. As far as all the rest of the defense, I love what they were doing. The Puka Nacua play, just a great catch by Nacua, good throw by Stafford. Hard to defend in that conditions. I agree with you. At that moment, you went, oh my, how is this happening? And am I about to see something that's going to make me sick for the entire offseason, right? And, Jalen Carter made a play. And that's what this defense has done. They've bowed up and made plays when they need to. As far as, taking the second part of your question, as far as it relates to Jaden Daniels, I am worried about having Nakobe Dean in this game from the standpoint that his speed and his ability to close ground against the mobile quarterback is, I think, going to be missed. Now, I gave Vic Fangio a lot of credit. He can really scheme some things up, and I'll be curious to see what he tries to throw at the rookie quarterback here in their third meeting to see what they can do to maybe slow him down a little bit. But, you got to the Commanders, to me, are playing like the 2017 Eagles. They got nothing to lose, everything to gain. They don't care that nobody's counting them or expecting them to win, and they're taking that underdog role and running with it, and that makes them a dangerous team. So the Eagles got to be ready to play on Sunday and be ready to take him down. Tackling is going to be key too. Can't have missed tackles, and that is something this whole second half of the season. This Eagles defense has done pretty well.
Talking with Scott Grayson of Fox 29 Philadelphia for Graysons Grades, helping us break down the Eagles' win yesterday in the divisional round over the Rams. I want to get back to the offense and something you were just discussing with PG about Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore, right? You said it is commendable that Jalen Hurts is protecting the ball. I agree 1,000%. And then you also touched on Kellen Moore with some of his questionable play calls. What are you doing? Why are you deciding to throw the ball in certain situations? Also agree with that for whatever that's worth. But I feel like it's the chicken or the egg argument sometimes when we're criticizing Kellen Moore for Jalen Hurts. And I'm not trying to put all the blame on Jalen. I'm curious more than anything. This is more Ryan being curious. Like, does Kellen Moore know something that we don't know? And that's limiting what they do with their play call, right? I don't think you can make an excuse for that decision to throw it late in the game. That's just idiotic, right? Hand the ball to Saquon there. There's no reason to even have Jalen potentially get a sack. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, maybe there's limited options creativity-wise, whatever it may be in the passing attack, because they know Jalen's struggling for whatever reason in certain key areas.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you look and you can ask yourselves, okay, why did they throw the ball to Saquon early in the season when they lost to the Falcons? And then you could say, well, if he catches that ball, that game's over, right? It's a win. So we know the result. In hindsight, we can easily ask the question and say, what were you thinking? And there's been a couple of those this season where they had some wins potentially. If they would have done one thing, they did another thing, and it didn't work out. Now, you're asking the question in terms of the Kellen Moore-Jalen Hurts relationship. Mm-hmm. Is there something there? Early in the season, and I've pointed this out, pretty much all season, to me, I noticed that they were getting off to slow starts. Why was that? As you watched it, it was, it seemed like Jalen Hurts had carte blanche to change plays whenever he wanted to. If you watch early in games now, he might change which side the ball is run to if it's a running play, but I don't think he's checking out of runs to passes. It doesn't look like it to me. And I think that was part of a conversation, something that happened in the bye week, along with the whole idea of running the ball more, was there's a reason I'm doing what I'm doing early in the game, Jalen. And I need to play this chess game to understand what they're doing. So I don't want you checking out of stuff in the first drive or two, first 15 plays, whatever it is. I haven't been able to pinpoint it totally. But you don't see Jalen checking out of stuff there. Later in the games, he gets that ability, it seems, that freedom to do what he needs to do or what he thinks he needs to do to check out of stuff. Somewhere in there, I might be blaming Kellen when it's Jalen changing a play. And I might be blaming Jalen when he wanted to run the ball and it's been called, but somewhere in there, those two guys to me, the same chapter. I just don't know if they're on the same page all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's fair, and that's how I feel too. And we're never going to know those answers. We're never going to know them, right? We're not in those meetings. We're not there day to day as they prep week to week. But it's something to chew on. I think the bottom line is they keep winning, and we're talking about them in the title game because they're playing some excellent football right now. Scott, before we let you run, I don't think you're going to be back on with us before this Washington game. So before we let you run, let's get a way too early final thought about this Washington matchup as they come into the link. As you mentioned, the scary thing is playing with complete house money as we're in Ocean Casino today. So give us your early week thoughts on this title game.
As you look at this and you say, okay, this is the third game between these two teams. And yes, we remember the last one most recently and how it went down. Here's the thing. When Jalen Hurts is playing, the Eagles have dominated the Commanders. He makes Saquon more of a weapon against the Commanders, right? Because of his threat to run. Kenny Pickett came in. They seem to say, we're not worried about him running. We're just going to focus on shutting down Saquon Barkley as best we can and make Kenny Pickett beat us. Well, now Jalen Hurts is going to be playing again. We don't know what that knee is going to be like yet, right? But he did finish the game yesterday. He's going to play. There's no way he stays out of this game. Right. It's just a matter of what percentage is he. And I think the Commanders are going to test him early. I think Jalen's mobility have shown that they can move the ball on this Commanders defense twice in less than 5 quarters while he's been playing. They've outscored the Commanders with Jalen Hurts on the field in less than 5 quarters, 33-18. And I think that's a big factor to me. I think this offense, with this offensive line, with Saquon hitting what stride he's on, and they played in the snow. It's not going to be snowing next Sunday. And I wouldn't be surprised if they throw to the air a little bit and try to mix that in. To me, though, Ryan, I mean, this team to me is headed to the Super Bowl. I just don't see them losing to the Commanders at home with everything on the line that is on the line here. This team is, when I've been around them the last few weeks, they're loose. They love playing with each other. They're having fun on both sides of the ball, and they don't care what anybody else says outside. And I think that, and they're not reading the press clippings too much either. They understand they got a job to do and go out there and do it. And I think this team's built and ready to get there. Whether or not they win it, I expect the Bills to win on the other side. I think they will beat the Chiefs. So I think we're looking at an Eagles-Bills Super Bowl. But, of course, the Eagles are most concerned with taking care of their business on Sunday, and I think they will.
Love it. Scott Grayson at S. Grayson Fox 29 for Graysons Grades. You can check out the article on 973ESPN.com as we start to look ahead now to Sunday at the Link for the NFC Championship game. Gotta love it, baby. Gotta love it. Scott, we appreciate you, my friend. We'll talk soon.
All right, Pete, Ryan, take care, guys.